The great human ship UES Nightborne came out of deep warp with a low hum. It was a giant of steel and light, stretching more than a kilometer from bow to stern. On its bridge stood Commander Ryan, his eyes fixed on the shifting lights of the main display. They had traveled across 2 sectors to reach this place. The message that brought them here was short, broken, and full of static. It had repeated the same words over and over. Help us. No name, no reason. Just the call for aid. Now they floated at the edge of the Keveran system, a cluster of planets and moons far from any human colony. Space outside the ship was black and silent. No friendly signals, no movement, not even the faint glow of trade, lanes. Technician Amar leaned over his station, his fingers moving across the controls. "Commander, I'm detecting unusual heat signatures," he said. His voice was calm, but there was a tightness in it. Ryan stepped closer. "Show me." On the display, bright spots appeared against the moon's surface below. They were not moving, but each glowed like the last embers of a fire. "What do you think it is?" asked Lieutenant Nara, the ship's pilot. Amar shook his head. "It is not natural. The readings are too high. It is like something burned here recently." The crew exchanged quiet looks. Out here, far from patrol routes, there were few reasons for cities or stations to burn. "Any sign of the attackers?" Ryan asked. "No ships on sensors," Amar replied. "No transmissions either." The silence in space felt heavier. Ryan thought about the message that had called them here. Someone had been alive when they sent it. But how many were left now? "Prepare a descent," Ryan ordered. "We will go down and see for ourselves." The ship shifted its orbit until the moon filled the forward view. From high above, the crew could see that the land was dark and broken. Long scars stretched across its surface as if something had dragged fire over it. Clouds of gray smoke still rose into the thin atmosphere. The Nightborne slowed as it entered the moon's skies. The descent was rough, with the winds pushing against the hull. Nara kept her hand steady on the controls, guiding the ship low. Over the plains, through the thick glass of the forward viewport, they saw the ruins of what had once been cities. Towers stood cracked and hollow, their sides blackened. The ground was littered with shapes that might have been machines or homes before the fire had taken them. Ryan called for a landing. The crew felt the slight jolt as the ship touched down. On a clear patch of scorched ground, a ground team of 6 prepared to leave. They wore light protective suits and carried scanners, ready for unknown dangers. Ryan led the way down the ramp, with Amar and engineer Sammy close behind. The air outside was thin and carried the scent of burned stone. As they walked, the crunch of ash under their boots was the only sound. The remains of a market lay to one side. Stalls collapsed, walls cracked open. "Commander," Sammy said, scanning a nearby structure, "there are signs of life under us. Weak readings, but definitely alive." They moved toward a half-buried entrance. The door had been twisted by heat, but Amar and Sammy pulled it aside. A dark stairway led down into a shelter. Inside, the air was warmer. Dozens of eyes turned toward them in the dim light. Thin figures stood back, their skin pale gray, their large eyes reflecting the team's helmet lamps. These were Kevarans, the native people of this moon. One of them, taller than the rest and wearing a woven sash, stepped forward. His voice was slow but clear. "Humans, you came." Ryan removed his helmet so the man could see his face. "We received your call. What happened here?" The Kavaran leader introduced himself as Tovan. His hands trembled slightly as he spoke. They came without a word. Ships appeared in our sky. We thought they were traders at first. Then the fire began. Who were they? Ryan asked. They called themselves the Vroth, Tovan replied. They moved faster than any ship we have seen. They did not speak to us. They did not take anything. They only burned. Entire towns gone in minutes. The heat was so great that nothing living could survive on the surface. The crew listened in silence. Amar glanced at Ryan, and Ryan saw in his eyes the same thought. This was not a normal war. The Vroth were not here for resources or territory. They were here to erase. How long ago did this happen? Sammy asked. Tovan lowered his head. 4 days. The burning stopped, but we do not know why. We stayed hidden, afraid they would return. Ryan turned to Amar. Check for any active transmissions from the Vroth. Any sign at all. Amar began scanning, his portable device beeping softly. After a moment, he frowned. There is something faint, encrypted bursts. It is coming from the far side of the moon. That is where they are, Nara said. Ryan nodded slowly. We will find them. But first we get these people to safety. The Kavarans looked at the humans with a mixture of fear and hope. To them, the Nightborne was a ship from distant stars, a symbol of something larger and stronger than the Vroth. As they guided the first group toward the ship, Ryan glanced at the horizon. The sky there was faintly red, not from sunset, but from something burning far away. The silence was no longer just emptiness. It was the stillness before another strike, and the Nightborne had just arrived in the middle of it. The UES Nightborne's engines rumbled softly as it lifted off the scorched ground. The ground team and the rescued Kavarans stood inside the cargo bay, holding onto the railings as the ship rose into the gray air. Commander Rian stood near the ramp, watching the ruined city fall away beneath them. The streets were nothing but black lines carved into the earth. Where buildings once stood, there were only piles of cracked stone and twisted metal. The heat readings from the surface still glowed on the Nightborne's sensors like wounds that refused to cool. Pilot Nara guided the ship toward the largest of the heat signatures. Commander, she said, her voice steady but low, if these readings are right, something very big burned here. Bigger than anything we saw when we landed. Ryan moved to the forward view. Through the haze, he saw a valley that had once held a sprawling settlement. Now it was nothing but gray ash. The ground shimmered as if it was still warm. In the distance, the skeleton of a great tower leaned at an angle, its upper half missing entirely. Technician Amar spoke from his station. The damage pattern is strange. The heat is concentrated in perfect circles, almost as if they targeted each spot directly instead of burning everything at once. That means precision weapons, Engineer Sammy said. Not random destruction. This was planned. As the ship circled low, Ryan noticed movement near the tower ruins. He ordered Nara to bring them closer. On the ground, several Keverans waved pieces of cloth, signaling for help. The Nightborne touched down on the edge of the ash field. A team of medics rushed out, their white suits bright against the dark ground. The survivors were thin and covered, in soot, but alive. One of them, a young Keveran named Lero, explained in a weak voice how they had hidden inside an old water tunnel during the attack. They came from the clouds, Lero said. We saw no warning, only the fire. The ground shook, and the air became too hot to breathe. Many tried to run, but the fire moved faster than they could. As the medics worked, Amar scanned the air. His face tightened. "Commander, the atmosphere here has unusual particles. The same ones we saw near the first city. They react strongly to certain energy waves. My guess is the Vroth used them to make their fire more intense." "That explains the heat," Sammy added. "If they fill the air with this substance before firing, the impact would be far greater. They are making the planet itself burn." The idea sent a chill through the crew. This was not only an attack, it was a methodical way to erase all life on a world. Ryan looked at the horizon. Thick smoke rolled upward, forming a dark wall in the distance. It was spreading, pushed by the thin winds. The sky itself seemed heavy, as if the ash was pressing down on it. They brought the survivors aboard and continued their flight over the moon's surface. The Keverans huddled together in the cargo bay, their wide eyes fixed on the blackened landscape. None spoke. As the Nightborne crossed over a wide canyon, the crew saw signs of another settlement. The buildings here were half burned, with sections still standing. Ryan ordered a scan for life. "There are some life signs," Amar reported, "but they are faint. I think they are underground again." They landed near the edge of the settlement. The ground team followed a narrow path between the ruined buildings. The air was cooler here, but the smell of burnt stone was stronger. In the center of what had once been a market square, they found a hatch partially hidden under rubble. It took several minutes to clear it. When they finally opened it, a group of Keverans climbed out slowly, shielding their eyes from the light. Among them was an older woman named Mira, who spoke with a voice that carried both sorrow and strength. "We thought we were alone," she told Ryan. "We thought no one would come." "You are not alone now," Ryan said firmly. "We are here to help." But even as he said the words, he knew that help alone was not enough. The Vroth were still out there, and every moment they waited was another chance for them to strike again. After bringing Mira and her people aboard, the Nightborne rose once more into the ash-filled sky. On the bridge, Amar worked at his console, trying to trace the faint encrypted signals they had detected earlier. "I have them again, Commander," he said. "They are moving. The source is shifting position on the far side of the moon." Nara turned in her seat. "Could be a ship or more than one?" Sammy frowned. "If they are cloaked, we will not see them until they want us to. The Vroth have technology we do not fully understand." Ryan thought for a moment. "Then we will understand it. Set a course for the signal. We need to know exactly what we are dealing with." The Nightborne angled upward, breaking through the thick layer of smoke. For a moment, the stars above were clear and sharp. But on the far edge of the horizon, faint shapes moved against the blackness. They were not visible on sensors, but the crew's eyes caught them. Shadows gliding silently above the moon. Ryan narrowed his gaze. The Vroth were here, watching, maybe waiting. And if they struck again, it would be without warning, just as before. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of the ship. Every crew member knew the next hours would decide more than just the fate of this moon. If the Vroth could burn a world like this so easily, then no colony was safe. The Nightborne moved forward into the darkness, its lights cutting through the emptiness. Somewhere ahead, the enemy waited, hidden among the stars. The war had already begun. The only question now was whether the humans could stop it before the fire spread to every world within reach. The UES Nightborne floated above the Keveran moon, its shields holding steady, But every crew member knew the quiet would not last. The Vroth ships had vanished again, fading into the darkness beyond sensor range. Commander Rian stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. The shapes of the 3 Vroth vessels were still marked on the map, thanks to the data Amar had gathered during the shuttle mission. But without constant scans, they could disappear at any moment. Technician. Amar adjusted the sensors. I can track their last known movement, but they are too fast. They could already be in a new position. Pilot Nara kept her hands on the controls. If they attack now, we will have only seconds to respond. Engineer Sammy checked the power. Readouts. Weapons charged. Shields at full. But if they use those white fire beams on us, the heat will eat through the shields faster than any weapon we know. Ryan nodded. Then we make sure they do not get the chance. Before anyone could reply, the bridge lights flickered. Amar's console flashed with a warning. Incoming energy spike. Multiple sources. Through the main viewport, streaks of white light tore across the black sky. In the space of a heartbeat, 3 beams slammed into the moon's surface below, turning rock and dust into a glowing crater. The shockwave rolled upward, rattling the Nightborne's hull. They are hitting the cities again, Nara said sharply. Ryan's voice was firm. Bring us in range. Target their firing points. The ship surged forward, using Amar's tracking data. Nara angled the Nightborne between the craters, forcing the Vroth to adjust their aim. Then the enemy ships appeared. Their cloaks rippled and broke as they unleashed another barrage. The largest ship, a curved vessel with white weapon ports glowing like frozen stars, moved to cut off the Nightborne's path. They are trying to surround us, Sammy warned. Not today, Ryan replied. Fire main batteries, twin beams of blue energy shot from the Nightborne's sides, striking the nearest Vroth ship. The impact rippled across its surface, forcing its cloak to collapse completely. Its hull was black and smooth, almost featureless except for the thin glowing lines near its weapons. But the enemy did not break. The second Vroth ship swung around, firing at the Nightborne's flank. Shields flared bright under the impact, and alarms rang out across the bridge. Shields at 60%, Sammy reported. Nara rolled the ship hard to the left, dodging another strike. We can't just trade shots. They are faster, and their aim is too precise. Ryan's mind moved quickly. Amar, feed the weapon data from the first ship into our targeting systems. Nara, keep us low over the surface. We use the terrain to block their sight lines. The Nightborne dropped lower, skimming the jagged ridges of the moon. Dust and ash swirled in their wake. The Vroth beams cut into the ground behind them, sending up walls of fire and smoke. As the crew worked, Sammy noticed something on the tactical screen. Commander, when their weapons fire, their hull temperature rises sharply. If we can hit them in that moment, the heat might cause a chain reaction. That is our opening, Ryan said. Nara, bring us around for a direct pass. The Nightborne climbed sharply, breaking from the surface and racing toward the lead Vroth ship. The enemy vessel adjusted, lining up for another strike. Wait for it, Ryan said quietly. The Vroth weapon ports glowed brighter. They're white. Fire building. Now, Ryan ordered. The Nightborne's forward cannons unleashed a full barrage. The shots struck the glowing weapon ports, and for a moment, the enemy ship's hull blazed with light. Then a shock wave burst outward, forcing the vessel to drift away. Its cloak failed entirely, leaving it exposed. Direct hit, Amar confirmed. Its weapons are offline. But the victory was brief. The second and third Vroth ships swept in together, firing in perfect sequence. The Nightborne rolled and climbed, but one beam grazed the hull, leaving a molten scar along its side. "Port side armor is damaged," Sammy called out. "We can't take many more hits like that." Ryan gritted his teeth. "We are ending this. Target the second ship's weapons." The Nightborne dove between the two enemy vessels, weaving through their fire. Blue energy from the human ship's guns tore into the second Vroth ship's flank. This time, the strike shattered part of the hull, sending fragments spinning into the void. The damaged ship pulled back, its cloak flickering wildly. The third ship, still untouched, began to retreat toward the far edge of the moon's orbit. "They are falling back," Amar said. Rian didn't relax, only for now. They will regroup. The Nightborne slowed and circled above the burned cities. Below, the damage was worse than before. Entire districts had been erased in minutes, leaving only glowing craters. The Kavarans who had survived. The first attack now had nowhere to return to. Nara's voice was low. "If we had been slower, this moon would already be gone." Ryan looked at the view and knew she was right. But this was only the beginning. The Vroth had tested human strength and had been wounded, but they would not give up. Their silence, their precision, and their speed meant they would strike again. Somewhere else, without warning. On the bridge, Sammy worked to stabilize the shields. Amar kept scanning for any returning signals, and Nara adjusted their orbit to stay between the moon and deep space. The silence returned, but it was not the silence of safety. It was the pause before the next strike. Rian stood at the center of the bridge, looking out at the stars. "We hold this position until all survivors are aboard. Then we hunt them." For the crew of the Nightborne, the battle had proved one thing. The Vroth were not invincible. They could be seen, they could be hit, and they could be forced to retreat. And that meant humanity had a chance. The UES Nightborne floated above the Keveran moon, its shields holding steady, but every crew member knew the quiet would not last. The Vroth ships had vanished again, fading into the darkness beyond sensor range. Commander Rian stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. The shapes of the three Vroth vessels were still marked on the map, thanks to the data Amar had gathered during the shuttle mission. But without constant scans, they could disappear at any moment. "Technician." Amar adjusted the sensors. "I can track their last known movement, but they are too fast. They could already be in a new position." Pilot Nara kept her hands on the controls. "If they attack now, we will have only seconds to respond." Engineer Sammy checked the power. Readouts. "Weapons charged. Shields at full. But if they use those white fire beams on us, the heat will eat through the shields faster than any weapon we know." Ryan nodded. "Then we make sure they do not get the chance." "Before anyone could reply, the bridge lights flickered. Amar's console flashed with a warning. "Incoming energy spike. Multiple sources." Through the main viewport, streaks of white light tore across the black sky. In the space of a heartbeat, 3 beams slammed into the moon's surface below, turning rock and dust into a glowing crater. The shockwave rolled upward, rattling the Nightborne's hull. "They are hitting the cities again," Nara said sharply. Ryan's voice was firm. "Bring us in range. Target their firing points." The ship surged forward, using Amar's tracking data. Nara angled the Nightborne between the craters, forcing the Vroth to adjust their aim. Then the enemy ships appeared. Their cloaks rippled and broke as they unleashed another barrage. The largest ship, a curved vessel with white weapon ports glowing like frozen stars, moved to cut off the Nightborne's path. They are trying to surround us, Sammy warned. Not today, Ryan replied. Fire main batteries, twin beams of blue energy shot from the Nightborne's sides, striking the nearest Vroth ship. The impact rippled across its surface, forcing its cloak to collapse completely. Its hull was black and smooth, almost featureless except for the thin glowing lines near its weapons. But the enemy did not break. The second Vroth ship swung around, firing at the Nightborne's flank. Shields flared bright under the impact, and alarms rang out across the bridge. Shields at 60%, Sammy reported. Nara rolled the ship hard to the left, dodging another strike. We can't just trade shots. They are faster, and their aim is too precise. Ryan's mind moved quickly. Amar, feed the weapon data from the first ship into our targeting systems. Nara, keep us low over the surface. We use the terrain to block their sight lines. The Nightborne dropped lower, skimming the jagged ridges of the moon. Dust and ash swirled in their wake. The Vroth beams cut into the ground behind them, sending up walls of fire and smoke. As the crew worked, Sammy noticed something on the tactical screen. Commander, when their weapons fire, their hull temperature rises sharply. If we can hit them in that moment, the heat might cause a chain reaction. That is our opening, Ryan said. Nara, bring us around for a direct pass. The Nightborne climbed sharply, breaking from the surface and racing toward the lead Vroth ship. The enemy vessel adjusted, lining up for another strike. Wait for it, Ryan said quietly. The Vroth weapon ports glowed brighter. They're white. Fire building. Now, Ryan ordered. The Nightborne's forward cannons unleashed a full barrage. The shots struck the glowing weapon ports, and for a moment, the enemy ship's hull blazed with light. Then a shock wave burst outward, forcing the vessel to drift away. Its cloak failed entirely, leaving it exposed. Direct hit, Amar confirmed. Its weapons are offline. But the victory was brief. The second and third Vroth ships swept in together, firing in perfect sequence. The Nightborne rolled and climbed, but one beam grazed the hull, leaving a molten scar along its side. Port side armor is damaged, Sammy called out. We can't take many more hits like that. Ryan gritted his teeth. We are ending this. Target the second ship's weapons. The Nightborne dove between the two enemy vessels, weaving through their fire. Blue energy from the human ship's guns tore into the second Vroth ship's flank. This time, the strike shattered part of the hull, sending fragments spinning into the void. The damaged ship pulled back, its cloak flickering wildly. The third ship, still untouched, began to retreat toward the far edge of the moon's orbit. They are falling back, Amar said. Rian didn't relax, only for now. They will regroup. The Nightborne slowed and circled above the burned cities. Below, the damage was worse than before. Entire districts had been erased in minutes, leaving only glowing craters. The Kavarans who had survived. The first attack now had nowhere to return to. Nara's voice was low. If we had been slower, this moon would already be gone. Ryan looked at the view and knew she was right. But this was only the beginning. The Vroth had tested human strength and had been wounded, but they would not give up. Their silence, their precision, and their speed meant they would strike again. Somewhere else, without warning. On the bridge, Sammy worked to stabilize the shields. Amar kept scanning for any returning signals, and Nara adjusted their orbit to stay between the moon and deep space. The silence returned, but it was not the silence of safety. It was the pause before the next strike. Rian stood at the center of the bridge, looking out at the stars. We hold this position until all survivors are aboard. Then we hunt them. For the crew of the Nightborne, the battle had proved one thing. The Vroth were not invincible. They could be seen, they could be hit, and they could be forced to retreat. And that meant humanity had a chance. The UES Nightborne hovered in orbit above the Kavaran moon, its engines humming steadily. The crew had taken a moment to recover after the first battle, but Commander Ryan knew the fight was far from over. Technician Amar worked at his console, scanning the remnants of the Vroth attack. "Commander, I have been studying the heat traces left by their weapons," he said. "There is something unusual." Ryan walked over, leaning on the rail. "What do you mean?" Amar tapped the screen, bringing up detailed readings of the burns left by the Vroth. "Their fire reacts to certain energy frequencies. When I compared the burns from the last attack to the ones before, I found a pattern. If we introduce the right energy at the right time, we might trigger a reaction in the weapon's particles." Sammy's eyes widened. "You mean we can make their own weapon backfire?" "Yes," Amar said quietly. "We just have to be precise." Ryan nodded. "Then we prepare. Nara, keep us low over the surface. We need terrain for cover. Sammy, get the engines ready to generate the energy pulse Amar needs. We cannot fail." The crew moved quickly. The Nightborne descended through the haze and ash, skimming the ridges and craters of the moon. Below, the Kavaran survivors were being evacuated to safety, guided by the medics and ground team. "Commander," Nara said, "we have about 15 minutes before they could return. The Vroth will not wait long." "Then we make every second count," Rian replied. Amar set up his device on the Nightborne's main deck. The device emitted a faint blue glow, calibrated to interact with the energy traces left in the Vroth fire. "I need a stable platform," he said. Sammy adjusted the ship's engine output to generate the proper field. The bridge filled with soft vibrations as the energy began to align with Amar's readings. "They will come," Rian said, his voice calm but firm. "We need to be ready the moment they appear." Minutes passed slowly, each one stretching the crew's nerves. Then Amar's console beeped sharply. "Commander, I am picking up movement. They are returning." On the main viewport, faint distortions shimmered against the dark sky. The 3 Vroth ships were moving in formation, their shapes still partly cloaked but visible enough to track. "Steady," Ryan said. "Do not engage until the pulse is ready." The Nightborne's shields flared, softly as the Vroth ships closed in. The first ship released a streak of white fire toward the moon's surface, creating a crater that glowed brightly. The second and third ships aligned behind it, preparing to strike. Amar activated the energy pulse. Blue waves spread from the Nightborne, surrounding the Vroth ships in a faint field. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then the white beams they fired began to flicker, their intensity fluctuating. "They are reacting," Amar shouted. "The particles in their weapons are destabilizing." The largest Vroth ship flinched in the sky, and the beam from its weapon sputtered before collapsing entirely. The other 2 ships followed, their fire weakening and misfiring. Ryan seized the opportunity. "Fire all weapons! Target the exposed hulls!" Blue energy from the Nightborne tore into the lead ship. The Vroth vessel shuddered as its weapon ports overheated. Sparks flew across the surface, and a section of its hull cracked. The ship began to drift, struggling to maintain position. The second ship tried to recover and fire again, but the energy pulse disrupted its weapon systems. Its fire fizzled out, leaving it vulnerable. Nara maneuvered the Nightborne between the two ships. "We have them! Keep firing!" Sammy monitored the shields and engines, keeping the Nightborne stable as it weaved between enemy fire and terrain. Amar continued to maintain the energy pulse, adjusting frequencies to destabilize the Vroth particles further. The third ship attempted a retreat, but the pulse affected it too. Its engines began to falter, forcing it to slow down. "Commander," Amar said, excitement in his voice, "this works. If we keep it steady, their weapons will fail completely." Ryan looked out at the three Vroth ships. They had underestimated humans. They had not expected humans to study their attacks and find a way to fight back using the very forces they relied upon. "Keep the pulse active," Ryan ordered. "Do not let them regain control." The Nightborne's beams tore into the second ship, and the lead ship's hull gave way. Small explosions lit the sky as pieces of armor broke free and floated into the thin atmosphere. The first Vroth ship, now completely defenseless, tried to flee, but the Nightborne's pursuit was relentless. "Prepare boarding shuttles," Ryan said. "We may be able to capture one of them intact. It is important to learn more about their technology." Sammy adjusted the engines, increasing output for rapid maneuvering. The Nightborne moved in close, keeping the Vroth ships within range of their weapons while staying just outside the effective range of any remaining fire. Amar continued to focus on the energy pulse, his fingers flying across the controls. "The particle destabilization is spreading through their systems. They cannot maintain weapons or shields for long." Finally, the lead ship lost all control. It spun in the sky before crashing into a distant ridge, exploding in a brilliant flash of white and orange. The second ship followed shortly after, its engines failing, leaving it to crash into the ash plains below. Only the third ship remained, retreating toward orbit. Its hull was damaged, its weapons offline. The Nightborne followed, ready to keep pressure on it. But Ryan made a decision. They will not come back immediately. Let them live this time. They will return to regroup, but we have shown them humans are not easy prey. We hold our position and prepare for the next wave. Amar stopped the pulse, exhaustion clear on his face. "We did it," he said quietly. Nara leaned back in her chair. "I never thought we could turn their own weapon against them." Sammy allowed herself a small smile. "It is only the beginning, but this is a start. Humans have shown we can adapt faster than they expected." Ryan looked out at the darkened horizon. The moon was still scarred, but the Keverans below were safe for now. The Nightborne had won the first real tactical victory against the Vroth. "This is a message," Ryan said. "The Vroth will not erase worlds so easily. Humans are here, and we fight back. The war has only begun, but we are no longer afraid of fire without warning. We have found the hidden flame." The crew watched the stars, aware that their enemies were still out there, planning their next strike. But for the first time since arriving, the humans felt a quiet confidence. They had discovered a weakness, and with it, the possibility of turning the war in their favor. The Nightborne continued its orbit over the Keveran moon, ready to defend the survivors below and to track any movement from the retreating Vroth. The war was far from over, but now humanity had a weapon the enemy could not ignore. The UES Nightborne rested in orbit above the Kevaran moon, its hull still glowing faintly from the earlier battle. The Kevaran survivors were safe in transport pods below, guided by the medics and ground teams. The ash clouds had begun to settle, leaving the moon's surface quiet except for the faint smoldering of ruined settlements. Commander Ryan stood on the bridge, reviewing the battle records. The Vroth ships had retreated, one destroyed, one heavily damaged, and the last retreating to orbit. It was a victory, but Ryan knew it was only temporary. Technician Amar approached, carrying new data from the energy pulse. "Commander, I have analyzed the last engagement. The Vroth weapon systems react to energy disruptions, but they also seem to adapt slowly. They may try to counter our pulse next time." Ryan nodded. "Then we need to stay unpredictable. We can't let them dictate the pace. Prepare a series of tests with the pulse, variations we can deploy quickly." Engineer Sammy checked the engine output and shield stability. "The Nightborne can handle another attack, but we cannot risk another close-range battle until we perfect these variations." Pilot Nara looked out at the fading shapes of the retreating Vroth ship. "They are moving toward the far side of the moon. I suspect they will regroup and plan a coordinated strike." Ryan's gaze followed the enemy's path. "Let them regroup. We will track them and force the next engagement on our terms." The bridge fell into a focused silence. Each crew member knew that the calm would not last. The Vroth did not attack blindly. They calculated, they waited, and they struck with precision. Hours passed as the Nightborne orbited the moon, scanning every possible movement. Amar continued to refine the pulse generator, running simulations and adjusting frequencies. Sammy monitored the ship's systems, ensuring that the Nightborne could respond to sudden strikes without delay. Nara kept the ship low, skimming the ridges of the moon for optimal coverage and concealment. Then faint readings appeared on Amar's console. "Commander," he said, "the last Vroth ship is still transmitting signals. Weak, but consistent. They are trying to coordinate with an unseen fleet, possibly from a nearby system." Ryan frowned. "We need to confirm that. Prepare long-range scans. If they have reinforcements, we must know before they arrive." The crew worked quickly. Hours of scanning revealed faint signatures of distant ships moving through the system, their size and speed consistent with the Vroth fleet. They were preparing, waiting, likely unaware that humans had discovered their hidden weakness. "Commander," Amar said, "we can intercept them before they reach the inner moons. If we position ourselves properly, we can force them into the energy pulse trap." Ryan considered the plan. "We cannot risk another full-scale engagement until we test the variations, but we can use the survivors as bait, in orbit, safe from fire, but drawing the Vroth closer to the pulse." Sammy shook her head slightly. "It is risky. We have never deployed the pulse in an actual combat scenario this large." Ryan's voice was firm. "Every new tactic carries risk, but we must act before the Vroth strike another settlement. Prepare the Nightborne for immediate maneuvering. We will make the first move, not them." As the Nightborne positioned itself over a stable ridge, Amar continued refining the pulse. Each adjustment made the energy waves more precise, capable of destabilizing multiple weapon systems simultaneously. Below, the moon's surface was silent, only the faint smoke from ruined cities curling in the thin wind. The Kavaran survivors had been guided to safer regions, their gratitude quiet but sincere. Mira, the elder Kavaran, approached the landing area, her voice carrying across the communication channel. "Humans," she said, "you have saved our people. You have shown strength we did not know existed. We will remember this day." Ryan allowed himself a brief nod. "We are only beginning, Mira. We will fight to ensure no world suffers as yours did." The Nightborne then entered a low orbit around the moon, moving in precise patterns to remain hidden. Sensors continued to sweep the horizon for the returning Vroth fleet. Hours passed again. The faint signals from the distant fleet grew stronger, moving closer. Amar's console beeped as the pulse generator registered interference. "They are approaching," Amar said. "Their weapons are already online. They have adapted slightly to our earlier attacks." Ryan's eyes narrowed. "Then we must be ready. Nara, maintain low altitude and stay hidden until the moment we strike. Sammy, ensure shields can handle multiple simultaneous hits. Amar, finalize the pulse sequence." The Nightborne's crew moved with quiet intensity, each member aware of the weight of the moment. They had won the first battle, but the next engagement would decide whether humans could truly challenge the Vroth. In orbit, the faint shadows of the approaching Vroth fleet appeared. Several vessels moved in formation, their cloaks partially active but detectable through the Nightborne's refined sensors. "They are testing the perimeter," Amar said, "not yet committing to a full attack." Ryan studied the display. "They are cautious. That is good. It gives us time to finalize the pulse." Minutes passed. The distant fleet moved closer, closing the distance to the inner moons. The Nightborne remained hidden, blending with the ridges and shadows of the terrain below. Then, without warning, one of the Vroth ships broke formation and fired a single beam at the Nightborne's previous position. The energy strike struck a ridge, throwing up clouds of dust and ash. "They are probing," Nara said. "Testing our defenses." Ryan nodded. "Let them. When the fleet commits, they will be exposed to the pulse. Prepare to engage at full capacity." Amar's console beeped again. The pulse generator was ready, capable of affecting the fleet simultaneously as they fired their weapons. Sammy ensured the engines and shields were tuned for the energy flux that would follow. The Nightborne remained still in low orbit, hidden against the moon's surface, waiting for the moment when the Vroth would commit to the attack. Rian spoke softly to the bridge crew. "This is the next step. The shadows in retreat are only temporary. We will turn their advance into their weakness. Humanity will not wait for fire without warning. We strike first." The crew felt a mixture of tension and anticipation. For the first time, they were not simply reacting to the Vroth. They were planning, adapting, and preparing to control the battlefield. As the distant fleet closed the distance, the Nightborne waited in the shadow of the moon, ready to turn the enemy's power against them. The war was far from over, but the humans had learned how to fight strategically. They had found a way to shape the battle, and that knowledge could change the course of the conflict. Above the scarred surface, the Nightborne floated, silent but prepared. Every crew member knew that the next engagement would decide the fate of many worlds, and for the first time they felt that humans might have a chance to win. The UES Nightborne hovered in low orbit above the Keveran moon, its crew tense but ready. The distant Vroth fleet, scattered but still threatening, moved closer, their shapes visible against the dark backdrop of space. Commander Ryan studied the tactical display, knowing this confrontation would decide the future of the Kevaran system. Technician Amar adjusted the energy pulse generator, ensuring the waves were perfectly aligned. "The pulse is ready," he said. "If we deploy it at the right moment, it will disrupt all Vroth weapons simultaneously." Engineer Sammy monitored the shields and engines. "We can handle the energy surge, but timing is critical. If the fleet spreads too far, the pulse will weaken." Pilot Nara gripped the controls, her hands steady. They are closing the distance faster now. I estimate 15 minutes before full engagement. Ryan nodded. Then we have little time. Prepare all systems. Everyone, this is the moment humanity proves itself. The Nightborne descended toward the moon's ridges, using shadows to conceal their approach. Below, the Keveran survivors huddled in safe zones, watching the sky for signs of fire. Their hope rested on the humans above. Amar spoke quietly. "Commander, I am detecting signals from the main Vroth ship. They are trying to coordinate a concentrated strike." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Good, they are committing. That is when we act." The first Vroth ship fired, a streak of white energy slicing through space toward the ridge where the Nightborne had been moments before. The beam struck harmlessly against a rocky slope, sending up clouds of ash. "They are falling into our trap," Nara said. Ryan activated the energy pulse. A soft blue wave spread outward from the Nightborne, invisible but powerful. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the Vroth weapons began to sputter. Their white fire faltered and weakened. "They are destabilized!" Amar shouted. "All ship's weapons are offline." Sammy adjusted the Nightborne's shields to absorb any remaining stray energy. "They will not fire properly now," she said. Ryan ordered, "Target their engines and weapon arrays. Fire everything." The Nightborne's main cannons unleashed a torrent of blue energy. The lead Vroth ship shuddered as multiple strikes hit its hull. Sparks and fragments flew into space. The second and third ships attempted to maneuver, but the pulse continued to disrupt their systems. "Keep the pulse steady," Amar called out. "Even small fluctuations can allow them to regain control." The Nightborne moved swiftly, using the moon's terrain to block any remaining fire. The Vroth ships struggled to maintain formation, their coordination failing under the energy pulse. "Target the nearest ship," Ryan ordered. "Bring it down before it can escape." Blue energy tore into the second ship, and its engines faltered. It drifted toward the moon's surface, smoke trailing from its weapon ports. With a controlled impact, the ship crashed into a distant crater, sending up a glowing plume of debris. The lead Vroth ship attempted to flee, but Ryan anticipated the move. "Nara, follow and keep it within range." The Nightborne surged forward. Energy beams struck the ship's hull repeatedly. The Vroth vessel's cloak flickered and then failed entirely. Its weapons were completely offline. Sparks erupted from multiple points, and it began to spin uncontrollably. Amar's voice was tense. "This is it, Commander. It cannot recover." Ryan gave the final order. "Concentrate fire on the engines. End this now." The Nightborne's volleys hit the lead ship. Its engines flared one last time before igniting in a bright explosion. Pieces of the hull scattered into space, leaving nothing but darkness in its place. The final Vroth ship, smaller but still threatening, tried to retreat. The pulse affected it as well, destabilizing its systems and forcing it into a slow, unsteady drift. The Nightborne moved in carefully, keeping shields up and weapons ready. "Hold your fire," Ryan commanded. "Let it see the defeat of its fleet. Let it understand humans are not easy prey." The last ship's engines faltered completely. It drifted toward a ridge, unable to maintain flight. Ryan's plan had worked. The Vroth fleet was defeated, not through destruction alone, but through strategy, patience, and understanding of the enemy's weakness. The Nightborne hovered in silence, watching the lone ship lie disabled. "This is our message," Ryan said quietly. "No more worlds will fall to fire without warning. Humanity fights back, and we do not surrender." Amar released a soft breath. We turn their own weapon against them. We have proven they are not invincible. Sammy allowed herself a smile. And we saved the Keverans. They will have a chance to rebuild now. Nara kept the Nightborne steady in orbit, her eyes scanning for any further threats. No more movements detected. They are retreating, Commander. Ryan nodded. The crew had done what seemed impossible hours before. They had faced an enemy far superior in firepower and speed and had turned the tide through courage, intelligence, and unity. Below, the Keveran survivors watched the sky. Their relief was visible, their eyes filled with gratitude. Mira, the elder, spoke softly into the comms. Humans, you have given us life again. You are true protectors. We will remember this day forever. Ryan allowed himself a small nod. We are honored to fight alongside you, Mira. The war is not over, but today we have shown that no one faces fire without warning. The Nightborne moved slowly, scanning the horizon for any remaining threats. Space was quiet now, almost peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos of hours before. The moon was scarred, its cities destroyed, but the survivors were safe. Humanity had defended a world against overwhelming odds. Amar stepped away from the console. Commander, the pulse can be used again if needed. We now understand the Vroth systems. They will think twice before attacking another settlement. Ryan's eyes traveled over the crew. This is more than a victory in battle. This is proof that humanity adapts, learns, and fights with intelligence. The Vroth burned without warning, but we responded without fear. We turned their strength into weakness. Sammy added quietly, we have a chance to change the course of this war. We can protect more worlds now. Ryan looked at the distant stars, imagining the vast reach of the Vroth. Yes, and we will, but for now, we hold this moon, and the Keverans live. The last ember has burned brightly, and humanity stands tall. The Nightborne orbited silently, a guardian over the scorched surface. The crew felt the weight of the victory, but also the responsibility. They had survived the first true test and had shown that humans would not be dismissed as insignificant. Ryan turned to the bridge crew. Today, we have proven that strategy, courage, and unity can overcome even the most destructive force. Humanity will continue to rise. This is only the beginning. The stars above sparkled calmly, and below, the Keveran moon slowly healed. In the light of the distant sun, the Nightborne remained, a symbol of human resolve, watching, guarding, and ready for whatever challenge would come next. The Vroth had learned a lesson they would not forget. Humans did not surrender. Humans adapted, and humans would always fight back. The war had begun, but humanity had already lit a spark that could never be extinguished. The Nightborne floated quietly, its engines steady, its crew ready, and the survivors safe. The final ember of the battle burned in their hearts, a promise of protection, courage, and hope for all the worlds to come.